Hey people, do you want to get your music into Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Tidal, and all the rest of the streaming services? Check out DistroKid. It's affordable and super easy to use. I've used it to distribute my music and I really dig it. Our listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/talkguitars. That's 30% off for our listeners at distrokid.com/talkguitars. Go get it. Hey everybody, it's Chris and Rick Talk Guitars, and today we have a special guest, none other than Kurt Bloch, Seattle local music icon, best known as one of the founding members of the band Fastbacks, producer and engineer extraordinaire, working with presidents of the United States of America, Robin Hitchcock, Flop, -5, Nashville Pussy, you name it, and guitarist extraordinaire, Kurt Bloch. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing just great. I have a nice half full cup of coffee and
Nice.
a comfortable perch.
So you're an optimist. It's half full.
yeah, exactly. In this case, I'll go with the optimist approach. Of course, I didn't even think that it was half empty. So yes, maybe not eternally an optimist, but an occasional optimist.
Dude, thanks so much for chatting with us. I really appreciate it. I remember you way back in the 80s because I was in a band called the Puget Sound. So we were playing clubs and going to see you guys live. So this is a treat for me to kind of think back to the 80s music scene and how cool that was and get to talk to you, man.
Yeah. There was much to be excited about back in the old 80s, for sure it's an interesting time, being of the age that we were in the 80s and, just as far as strictly guitar playing, if not everything else, just thinking how hard it was to get things to work and to sound good and all those things that we sort of take for granted now. I mean, you could buy a $200 amp and a $200 guitar and you could be off and running if you wanted. You sound just fine, but absolutely was not the case in, 1982 or, even, later into the 80s.
Totally.
The Hondo 2 finger shredder.
Oh yeah, I've got that. I guess you guys don't know. Of course, we probably all have a handful of guitars each.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know what the one is called. It's like sort of a metallic blue with red painted on trim Hondo 2. That is the super pointy guitar.
Oh man.
I'll bet you guys know what it's called, and it's down in the basement. Otherwise, if it was handy, I would send you a photo of it.
It sounds awesome.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can see it in my mind. And I know, I have a whole stack of old guitar player magazines, and I'm sure it's in there. I know there's a bunch of Hondo ads, so yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the one that I have works fine. It's about time that it gets a gig call, I think. What band, though?
Oh, dude, any band. Just whip that sucker out, man.
Yeah. What band wouldn't appreciate that?
Totally.
I know that one of the reasons I had to have it, and it was many years ago that I bought it. It was one that it was kind of unmolested. It wasn't repainted or carved out for anything else, but it didn't come with a hard shell case, but it does come with a cardboard case, like its original one. And the shape of this case, it's so funny. I mean, it's the exact same shape as the guitar. Right. It's very, close fitted. And it's like, wow, whoever had to make that case,
right.
Just would have had the worst job. It's like, you're kidding. We're going to actually make a cardboard case for this.
If you didn't have it, you would never have it, because where the hell are you going to find one of those?
Yeah. I don't think there's a ton of them kicking around. Yeah, we found a warehouse full of these.
Yeah, right.
We have the Anvil version, yeah.
Yeah, we'll make it. I'll trade this one for an Anvil version. Yeah, which I imagine would be easier to make because you just fill it up with put a piece of foam in there and trace outside and put her in there. Yeah, done. That would be easy, comparatively easy.
Well, I'm always fascinated to know what got people into music. So, since we're talking about the old days, man, let's go way back. And what got you into music initially, and guitar for that matter?
Well, definitely was into buying records and listening to music, before actually playing guitar or anything. And none of the rest of my family, other than me and my dad, were really interested in tinkering and electronics and stuff. My dad was an electrical engineer at Boeing, and he wasn't a musician in any way, although he loved records and he loved listening to music. But I don't think he ever really played an instrument at all. But we ended up oftentimes on Saturdays when I was a little kid. I don't know, maybe 9, 10 years old. We'd go to thrift stores. We'd go to the Goodwill and the Salvation Army and the St. Vincent de Paul thrift store that was down on Lake Union, and just poke around. And my dad was, I suppose I ended up very much like him, just looking for things that would make an inspiring project. It's like, whoa, this is cool. I'm sure we could do something with this. And my dad liked, big electric motors, and he was also a machinist. And so, I understand, you can get an air compressor for $1 and I don't know how many horsepower those big electric motors were that they used for. I don't even know what they used them for. I was not so excited about that stuff. My dad would, wander over to the heavier machinery department, and I would end up flipping through records, because there was always thousands of records at the thrift stores back then. And, a lot of times I just pull ones out, 45s or whatever, were 5 cents a piece or something like that, and just dig through and find records that you thought were either interesting looking or that you might think that they were good. And nobody that I knew had any interest in that. They were just only wanted to hear the songs that they knew from the radio or whatnot. So from a pretty early age, and I also loved the songs on the radio, and by the time I was 11 or 12 or whatever, we're buying 45s from the not record stores, but just the pay and saves and the places that had record 45s, the top 40 singles or whatnot. And I like the current popular songs. There was in 1972 there was all kinds of great records to buy, but then just the idea of finding other records, that wow, this could be cool. And even if you're 10 years old, a 5-cent record, it's like, whatever, okay, maybe it's stupid, maybe not. And, just being fascinated first by just records in general and the songs that you knew. And then, interesting looking record labels. Yeah. And then you start thinking of well, why does this record sound really cool? And why is it really loud? And this record, why does it sound kind of lame? And looking at the grooves, and, it's just well, this record is loud, and you can actually see the groove in the record. You can see how, squiggly it is. And you think, wow, this one's loud. And then you look at a record from the early 50s or whatever, and it doesn't play as loud. And you can tell that the record groove is really much thinner. Yeah. I think there's got to be something going on there. Just being interested by all those things. And then, in the early 70s, even listening to the radio and listening to some of the songs that sounded so super cool. It's like, well, what makes this sound so cool? And what about this one? Why does this sound so great? And, just paying attention to what makes things sound cool. At some point, also right around then, started going to, I think, when I started in high school, which was grade 10, right? Back in the 70s. They offered a folk guitar class.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, oh, hell yeah, I want to learn how to play guitar while I'm at school. How cool is, being a high schooler? And also the high school that I went to, Nathan Hale, had a radio station as part of their curriculum. So it's like, oh, hell yeah, I can go and I can take math and chemistry or history and the regular things, but I can also take a guitar class. I can also learn how to play guitar at school and learn how to work at a radio station.
That's so cool.
And of course, the radio station, their goal was to get people to, that wanted to have that as their vocation.
Right, right.
It was sort of pushing in that direction. And so there was the people who, wanted to be engineers at the radio station and learn how to, work on the transmitters and the heavy duty the heavy lifting electronics of that. And then there was the people that, wanted to be news people and stuff. And it was like, oh, fuck, I just want to listen to music. And that's all I really care.
What did you gravitate towards at the station? Did you DJ and was that KCMU?
No, it was,
was it Nathan Hale?
Oh, KNHC.
Yeah,
that's
Nathan
right.
Hale. Yeah, KCMU was University of Washington.
Oh, that's right.
KNHC was Nathan Hale. And during the day, like when any old people could be listening or whatever, they stuck to pretty easy listening and people honing their news reading chops and public service programming and lots of PSAs and stuff like that. And then after school got out, I think, between maybe 4 and 7 o'clock or 4 and something like that, they would, you could play some slightly, more kick-ass music. And then I think about maybe they went off the air at 11 every night, but from 7 till 11, they played, they sort of played hard rock music. And those DJ shifts were the sought after ones and the ones that were preordained for this handful of, a couple years older than I was, people that did the late shifts but they got to play all the cool music. So it's like, geez, just like, look at all these cool records and, some bands that I knew and then tons of bands that I didn't know. But definitely mid 70s, you're the right age and absolutely the right sort of petri dish to get stoked by, kick-ass hard rock.
Were there specific bands that you can remember that really set you off at that time?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like the first Queen records were, gold there. The first Montrose album, I remember, because you think like a radio station, everything's going to be in good condition and everyone's going to have their shit together and stuff. Somebody dropped the white label promo Montrose first record there and, took a chunk out of the edge of it. So Good Rockin' Night and Rock the Nation were both unplayable on that copy. There's a big chunk out of the edge of it.
That's a drag.
So somebody brought in their own copy and recorded those two songs onto a 1/4-inch reel-to-reel. So if you wanted to play either of those, you had to go to the reel-to-reel. But and I just remember watching one of the nighttime DJs play Space Station Number 5 or something and seeing the record going around it. I mean, that record was probably played thousands of times and just, on the edge of being unusable. But, watching it spin around with a big chunk out of the edge of it. And, the first 3 Kiss records were giant and UFO. I remember Judas Priest, Sad Wings of Destiny came in and it was like, oh, geez, this is like, this is, you couldn't ask for a better record for our high school, situation.
That Judas Priest stuff is great because back then it seemed like, oh, this is such heavy, and it's pop brilliant. Those songs are so catchy.
Well, but Sad Wings is kind of, a little bit more like, it's a little bit more like Queen or something like that. Very catchy for sure. But it's, it's not the same. It's not the same recipe. It's the same people, but like we thought, well, this is like the coolest record of all time ever. It's like Queen 2 all the way through, like all hard rock,
right?
So like side 2 of Queen 2, but for the whole album. And then Sin After Sin came out, and I would go to bat by saying Sin After Sin maybe the first contemporary metal record. Sad Wings came out in 76, I think, and Sin After Sin was 77. And as far as I know, that was the first record that had that sound of, two cranked up Marshalls the whole way playing the Sad Wings is Stratocasters and non-master volume Marshalls, pretty easy to tell that. And then the next record was just like, wow, this is a whole nother level of having your mind being blown by, precision drumming and, like a rhythm guitar world that we had not really heard before. So we're just like, whoa, this is, I don't even know. This is a level that I don't even know.
Yeah.
Oh, right around this time, you have an acoustic guitar and learning how to play guitar in school. And, whatever year that was, when does school start? In August? September? I was just like, wow, I really like the idea of playing guitar. We didn't have any electric guitars at our house. My sister also played acoustic guitar. And I was like, well, I'm talking to my dad, and it's like, well, I really want an electric guitar. Maybe I get an electric guitar for Christmas. Like, oh yeah, well, see what we can do. Liking the idea, because my dad loved electric guitar, the 50s sort of style, the Duane Eddy and Jorgen Ingman and Les Paul and Chet Atkins and that kind of guitar. And I know that he had little patience for the first Black Sabbath album or Judas Priest, or the onslaught that was to show up. But he's like, yeah, I was talking to a buddy at work, and he says the best idea for a guitar is not to get a new one, but to buy a good used guitar, like a good brand. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great to me, whatever. But that's not what I got. What I ended up getting was a Pan SG copy. It was not a great guitar, but whatever. Any guitar was kind of cool. But my dad being an electrical audio, not necessarily audio, but electrical engineer, and started monkeying around trying to get amplifiers that were good, and of course he didn't understand the need for distortion, so you end up like with just like a tiny little amp and turning it up all the way, or plugging your guitar into a stereo amplifier and the phono input or something and cranking that up, or any of the things that we did to try to get things to sound.
My dad worked at Boeing too, and a buddy of his had this, he knew I was into guitar. Yeah. So he came home with this little silver-faced Champ, and I'm like, I was kind of semi-disappointed, but psyched at the same time. So I just, you just dime it and do the best you can. But
right. And, like sort of parallel to that, like this is maybe a couple years later, when my first band started in my parents' basement, the Cheaters, Kim Warnick from the Fastback, her parents had rented her a guitar and an amp from the music rental, Kennelly Keys or whatever it may have been. And so she shows up with a Stratocaster and a Silverface Fender Champ that were rented from the store. Her parents thinking that, oh, she wants to play guitar. Well, she's not going to stick with it. We'll just rent her these things and see, till she gets bored of them.
Right.
And I was like, oh, can I try the amp for band practice? And plugged into it and turned it all the way up, of course, as you would. And it lasted for, maybe 10 or 15 minutes and then just went silent. as you might expect. And I was like, oh shit, am I going to have to, pay for this amp? This must cost at least $100. Like I don't have any, I don't know how to do that. And then they just brought it back to the store and said, well, this doesn't work. Okay, well, we'll give you another one or whatever. But of course, the thing of always, we didn't know anything about guitars or how they worked,
right,
or how to change strings or how to tune a guitar or how to do anything. You just plug any instrument into any amp and see what it sounds like. Yeah. And I had another buddy that was in my same high school class, and instantly after getting out of high school, he got a nice job. And I think he also went to work for Boeing, and had way more money than any of us. And he, bought some cool guitars, and, he'd bring over an ES335 and it's like, well, try this. And you plug that in and it's like, wow, this sounds way better than the Pan SG. And like, wow, this is cool. But why, what's the difference? Well, okay, the pickup must be the difference. So I, carved a hole in it and put in a bigger pickup from a different guitar into the Pan SG, which was bigger in size. But then, at one point I took it apart and it was, looked like a humbucking pickup, but there was still only one coil in it. Right. And just made like some of those cheap ones. They're made to look like they were a humbucker, but there's still just one, low power coil and some, light ass magnet. And so it didn't really sound that much better. And it's like, well, okay,
right.
Well, there's this. So anytime we had anything to do, like if we were making tapes or anything, I'd try to borrow the 335. And then like the next step was somebody, some stoner. It had to have been during high school, because I don't know how else I would have had, a carload of music gear. And it was like a Univox sort of 335 copy, a Fender Tremolux head, and a couple speaker cabinets, like a Fender cabinet. Maybe there was no speakers in it, and like sort of a home-built giant wooden cabinet with a couple realistic big giant magnet speakers. Maybe they were, man. I don't know what they were made for. They might have been for PA or something like that. And then it, figured out, it's like, wow, well, this Tremolux amp, this works pretty good. If I plug this into this cabinet and turn it all the way up, it kind of sounds kick-ass. It, kind of sounds like, the sound that you want. And, little did I know, it was kind of perfect, really. If I would have had a nice guitar, it would have been, kind of a perfect and a reasonable speaker cabinet. But,
right.
Nobody knows anything. We wanted a Les Paul Jr. and a Marshall, 52-watt Marshall head and a 412 cab. Yeah. But, those were all $500 a piece or something. And right. I got this whole load of music gear for like $75. And fortunately, I still have the Tremolux head.
Really?
Yeah. It was like a early 60s one that was kind of that brown color.
Oh, right.
Pretty cool. And somebody had painted it black, and I didn't realize it had been painted black. I just thought, oh, it's, must be, but it had, brown faceplate or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so one day I was, looking at it, it's like, oh, this isn't black. It's that creamy brown color. It's like, well, that's stupid. Why would somebody do that and try to get the black paint off? And it didn't really come off. So I thought, well, I'll just get a can of, cream spray paint and paint over the black. So I did that, and it looked horrible. It looked, just like It's like, oh, fuck, I wrecked this thing. Looks terrible. Brand new, bright, creamy color. It's like, well, that was stupid. And then now, 45 years later, it looks almost like an original color.
Oh, that's awesome.
Been kicking around and had stuff dumped on it. And, the paint is totally faded and, so it's like, wow, this is pretty cool.
So from the Cheaters, is that where you met Kim? Or did you know Kim from school or?
Me and Kim and Lulu all went to the same high school. So we were all neighbors-ish. And we all, did Lulu go to the same, Kim and I went to Jane Addams. I don't know if Lulu went to Jane Addams or not. I can't remember, but I didn't know, I didn't really know Kim. We went 3 years to junior high and 3 years to regular high school, but we never had a class together in 6 years. And, of course, you guys remember the junior highs and high school, the class sizes were giant back then. I mean, there's, Jane Addams had thousands. I don't know how many kids went to it, but it's just amazing that I never had a class with Kim out of 6 years. And I met Lulu the last year in high school, the last quarter, the last trimester of high school. I took a photography class, and Lulu was in that class. And so I, met her. She was printing pictures of Iggy and David Bowie from that 1977 Paramount show.
Wow.
And I was like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm printing these. I sell them to people. It's like, you went to that show? Like, yeah, I loved it. It's like, wait, because this was, whenever it was, July 1977 or whatever
That's
it was.
so
like,
cool.
It seemed like there was a total of 6 people in the whole high school that liked, anything that was even sort of punk rock. And here I thought I knew everybody that, it was not the cool thing to like when you were in high school, really.
Right.
But it seemed, by that point, it seemed to me that it was the next step from, the first Montrose record and all the stuff that we liked from the years earlier. And then it's like, wow, hearing the Damned and the Sex Pistols and the Ramones, it's like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Like, bring this on.
Totally.
And we love the Blue Oyster Cult and whatnot. So anyway, the Fastbacks or the Cheaters sort of probably formed that summer, or the summer fall of 70. And they must have been going a little before that, somewhere around, probably right around middle of 77. And whenever it was, we, when we started playing, we tried to play Blue Oyster Cult and the Dictators and things like that. And it just was, we just weren't any good. It just didn't. It was playing the music that we knew was maybe a little bit above our skill set at the time. And then, listening to, the Ramones and Sex Pistols and, whatnot. It's like, wow, well, we could probably play some of these songs and some of the music that's like this. So that went pretty good. And, so our band lineup sort of was, if you don't really know how to play anything, people kind of come and go. And there was maybe one high school buddy that was in the Cheaters maybe for a first show or two, who actually knew how to play guitar. And, he wasn't really having the punk rock bit, he wanted to play, Led Zeppelin and Santana and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, can't do that, so he bailed and started another band of people that could actually play a little better. And we stumbled along in the basement for a couple of years, trying to get that going. And our first show was March 17th and 18th, 1978.
Was it a club or was it a?
Well, it was this place, The Bird. Maybe the first. It was absolutely the first punk club in Seattle. And we had met the band The Enemy. There was another. There was a happening Seattle band. Right around that same time, late 77, early 78. And one of those guys approached us, I think, at a Ramones show at the Paramount, which would have been, late 77. And it's like, oh yeah, we're opening a punk club. Are you guys in a band? And we're like, yeah, we're in a band. Hell yeah, man. Would you guys want to play at our club? And, we're like, I was, maybe 17. My brother Al was 16 and still had a year of high school left. And we're like, oh yeah, sure. That would be great. Well, give us your number and we'll give you a call when we're, getting ready to open. And so they opened at the beginning of March, first weekend of March 78. And so we 2 weeks later, we were on a show at their punk club. And, just clearly way above our heads. We had no idea. We'd seen enough bands and listened to bands and, we're total smart assholes, but it really had no idea how to play music. Totally trial by fire.
Do you think that was kind of good for you guys though, to just kind of dive in and
100%. You learn, in 1 minute what to do and what not to do. What to do. Play as hard as you can. What not to do. Throw hot dogs at the audience.
All those life lessons.
Life lessons learned quickly.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that, so I'm glad I know now. No hot dogs.
yeah. If you think of bringing bags of hot dogs to assault the audience with, don't. Not because you can't throw them at the audience, but anything that you throw at the audience, you don't always think of this, but they pick up and throw right back at you. Right. So, if you want to be slipping on stepped on smooshy, greasy, raw hot dogs on the stage, that's a pretty good thing to do if that's what you want. And you probably don't. But very very funny, and so the actual kids that were maybe a little older than us pretty much widely hated us. They thought we were, because we didn't really look very punk.
Were you playing originals at the time or covers?
We had some originals. Probably at that. I somewhere there is a tape of our first show at the Bird.
Dude.
And I can pretty much remember, we might have had a couple originals, and we played Cars and Girls from the first Dictators album. I remember that. And we might have played Red and Black, the Red and the Black by Blue Oyster Cult by then. And maybe a couple originals and maybe a couple things that at the time we thought were songs that really were just screwing around, playing something stupid and the singer yelling at people over the top of it. Sort of, we didn't know. I remember somebody making fun of us one time, saying, it's like, they were bragging about their band, and it's like, well, we've got 50 original songs. And it's like, well, we've got 10 or 12 songs. And they're like, well, yeah, I'll tell you something. A song is more than just, one thing going over and over again and someone yelling over the top of it. So, and I was like, it is?
Really?
It's like, huh. You fuck you, man. You're
Amen,
wrong.
brother.
And I'm like, yeah, listen, fucker, you're wrong. We know what we're talking about. And it's like, oh yeah, I guess some of these songs are just some notes with somebody yelling over the top of them. yeah, man. So
From that first show, did you kind of get the bug, or were you daunted, or?
oh no, but the bug was already in place. Like,
Oh, cool.
From it must have been. I mean, I could name a few shows that made me know that is absolutely what I was going to do. One of them was, I think it was 1976, seeing UFO at the Gold Creek Dome in Woodinville.
Dude. Yep.
And Jesus,
Shanker.
and we didn't know, me and my for sure. And just the 4-piece too. There was no keyboard or anything at that point yet, as far as I remember. And we didn't know. We thought I went with a different high school buddy, and we somehow thought it was a bar because there was maybe people drinking beer. And, if I was 15 at the time, it's like, gosh, I don't want to get kicked out. We better just like disappear and not talk to anybody. But we went, I was standing right in front of the stage, right in front of Michael Schenker's amps.
Dude.
And I was like, oh, like maybe I'd been to some shows like Coliseum shows or whatnot and thought they were cool, but to see, that band and be standing, 3 feet in front of the guy and hearing the loud amp on the stage, it's like, wow, this is a life changer. Next life changer that I remember for sure was August 13th, I believe, 1977. Kiss at the Coliseum with Cheap Trick opening.
I was at that show.
Oh, you were at that show?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. It was maybe the most killer. And we liked Kiss, and thought that was great, and that's who we were going to go to see. But then another buddy had seen the show in Vancouver a week before, a little bit before. He said, "Oh, be sure to get in line early and make sure you see the first band. They're my new favorite band of all time. You guys are just going to love them. It's everything you want about a rock band." I was like, okay. And we'd heard of Cheap Trick. I don't know if I'd ever actually heard them. I don't know if In Color even was out yet.
Right.
Maybe right around that time. And we went, and I brought a camera and a tape recorder. And I was like, because I thought, oh, I got to take photos of Kiss. And I thought, well, I might as well record this first band too. And the tape sounds absolutely terrible. But went right up front, or very close to the front, and saw Cheap Trick, and I was like, all right, this is the greatest band I've ever seen. And which Cheap Trick in 1977 was arguably as good as any live rock band there's ever been.
Totally.
In my opinion, like every 77 show that you see or hear or whatever, it's just, the greatest. And to have never actually heard them before and see this band, and it's like, all right, this is what I'm doing the rest of my life. I don't know about the rest of you guys.
I'm so glad you mentioned that show. Yeah, because I was there. So what was the next changer besides that?
Well,
one?
that lasted for, there's, then, we got a little more serious, and the Cheaters started and played, and another life-changing night was not until 1979, when there was 2 shows in town. The Paramount headlining was UFO post Michael Schenker, but the opening band out of 3 was the first Judas Priest show in Seattle.
Oh man, very cool.
And then across the downtown at the arena was Van Halen, who I'd not seen opening for Black Sabbath.
Did you go to that show?
I did not. I don't know why I didn't. We'd seen Black Sabbath in, I think, 1975, 76. I'm not sure what the date was on that. And it was pretty good, but like the Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, the later Black Sabbath records just didn't do it for me.
Yeah.
So they were maybe had fallen off maybe kind of got usurped by punk.
Yeah.
But I loved the Van Halen from when that first Van Halen record came out. It was Kim from the Fastbacks that had the cassette of that, or maybe she'd made a cassette from the LP, and driving around in her car listening to Van Halen 1. And it's like, oh my Jesus Christ. So, okay, I remember hearing it without ever seeing photos of her, and driving around. It's like, this is unbelievable. I've never heard anything, this kick ass. And just thinking that they probably looked like, we liked AC/DC for sure. They probably look like AC/DC. They probably look street tough and kind of gnarly and stuff. And then being in a record store, it's like, oh, I should get that Van Halen record, and look at the cover and thinking, oh no, they look like this. Everybody's going to hate them. Yeah. Oh shit! What am I gonna do? And of course, we still love Van Halen, but it was not. They were, or some of the people that we knew, they were absolutely the least cool. Yeah. It's like, yeah, but just listen to this. Listen to the music. Yeah. So you either loved Van Halen or hated them. There was no middle ground. Especially 79, 78, 79. You couldn't. Even AC/DC was absolutely not cool. And their first shows in Seattle, I don't know if you went to that, it must have been 78. It was 2 nights of Ted Nugent headlining, Cheap Trick middle, AC/DC opening at the Coliseum. Do either guys go to those? My
brother went to the one of those shows. Yeah.
Yeah. We went to both of those because we loved AC/DC. And, by that time, getting a little bit, tired of the Nuge, but like AC/DC and Cheap Trick, we're going both nights. So the first night of that, we bought tickets for both nights. And the first night we're waiting in line, and, you hear AC/DC going on, and it's like, fuck, we're going to miss fucking AC/DC. And the line, is going slow. And it's like, oh, what are we going to do? We finally get in and see the last 10 minutes of AC/DC, and nobody liked them. They thought they were punk rock. And if you like Ted Nugent, you didn't like punk rock. Yeah.
Right.
And so, Angus Young goes with a long cable out in the audience and, on Bon Scott's shoulders. And it's like, fuck, this is mind-blowingly killer. And all you dumbasses are not. What's not to like about this? So, and then Cheap Trick played, and they were absolutely killer, and, stayed for a few songs in Nugent, and it was just not cool. So the next night, we get in line, we go there a little bit earlier, and, waiting in line. And it's like, we're going to miss AC/DC again, and fuck that. So we snuck in. We even had tickets, but we had to sneak in,
my gosh.
Which we were kind of used to doing for lesser shows that we didn't have tickets for. So we had to sneak in so that we wouldn't miss AC/DC. And so that night we got to see the whole AC/DC show, the whole Cheap Trick show, and then we skedaddled. And then the next night was the Portland Paramount, and it was Cheap Trick headlining, AC/DC opening, and no Nugent. So we're like, the one buddy that we had that had a car, like, you want to drive down to Portland? And so, we drove down to Portland. We saw that, and AC/DC played, hour opening set, and Cheap Trick played, 70 minutes or something like that. And, it was great. It was, I believe it was Power Ridge Tour.
That's a great record.
Now that's a great record right there.
That's Keith Richards' favorite AC/DC record too.
If I had to pick a favorite, it would be Let There Be Rock, but I would have to say that Power Ridge would be right next to that.
All those early ones. Fuck.
Yeah, you can't, hard to pick a favorite. And then, seeing all the, starting in whenever, like the punk bands actually started playing, and going to, see bands where you were right in front of the amps and the drums and stuff. It was right around that pivotal time, seeing the Ramones and, in 77, and then seeing the touring punk bands that, we'd either play at the Bird, the first Bird or the second Bird, and the, occasional hall shows and stuff like that. And, it was in some ways exactly the right time to be alive. If you're a few years older, you probably, it wouldn't have been quite as exciting to, see Cheap Trick and AC/DC and Van Halen, but for, 1978 was a mega pivotal year. Yeah, because all those guys, not their first albums, but they all sort of, AC/DC had been going, and I guess, and Cheap Trick as well. They were maybe on their third album by then.
Yeah,
but they were all, absolutely happening, and you just, what more do you want?
Exactly. I learned about AC/DC and Cheap Trick the same day. It was right around that. I think it was like 77, 78. And my friend had those records, and I would not leave until he made me a cassette. But to find out about those bands on like the same day, that shit like that happened all the time back then.
Right. Because, they played in Seattle. They played, what song did they play off Let There Be Rock? Dog Eat Dog, I suppose. But they didn't play anything. We didn't hear about the first Cheap Trick record, although we did have it at our high school radio station. And then, of course, the next day you go in there and it's like, oh, here's that record. Yeah, okay. But it was, you had to hear stuff from friends and cassette tapes.
All the stuff you mentioned as being pivotal to you is pivotal to me as well. I mean, I saw a lot of those shows, and I wish I had seen a lot of the other shows, like you referenced UFO and stuff like that, because I was hugely into Schenker, and it sounds like the live stuff in close proximity was really, really affected you, because you're just right there. I mean, you're not in a huge stadium or coliseum where you're removed from the band, but like you were saying, you're right in front of the band. You can hear the amps, you can hear the drums. It's just so immediate and visceral.
Right. And it really is. And if you only saw shows from, the far away, like, I remember the first show that I went to was, it was also at the arena. It was Queen with Thin Lizzy opening in 77. And, we just went and got some seats that were pretty crappy and watched Thin Lizzy. And I was like, wow, this is fucking great. And then, one buddy was like, let's go to the front. It's like, no, we can't do that. It's packed up there. Those people, we can't get up there. It's like, yeah, we can. I've done that before. You just push your way up there. It's fine. It's like, oh, I don't know if we should do that. It's like, oh yeah, we should do that. So we pushed our way up front. And, I even had a little rangefinder camera and managed to get a few pretty cool photos at that, but it's just a whole nother, it's not this amalgamation of music blasting at you, which is also cool.
Yeah.
But when you can actually see the guy playing the guitar, and you can see what it actually sounds like, coming from the stage, hearing what the actual guitar player is hearing.
Right.
It's not all through a PA, and it was, right at that same time that punk rock came out, and also parallel to the time we were growing up, the live music scene was so dismal in Seattle. It was all at bars, so it's not like we could actually go in there and hang out, but you'd walk by bars that had live music, and it was all like dun, da, 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 like blues sort of music, and bands playing not the current top 40, but the top 40 from 1968 or something like that. Yeah. And of course, there was tons of great songs in 1968, but it was not there was just sort of regular music and blues. And I remember being absolutely sure that when I got a guitar, and the one or two people that I knew that played guitar were all ba 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 wow wow ba 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 wow. It's like, why do you want to do that? Oh, I love Clapton, man. like, oh, like that's just so boring. It's like you walk by any bar and it's somebody playing Barney, Narny, 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 blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. It's like, who cares about that? Just wanting to do something different and, listening to Michael Schenker or Buck Dharma. Buck Dharma also is, pretty pentatonic in his note choices, but for some reason, some of those guys just figured out how to take those same notes and make them sound different.
Yes,
And,
I agree.
Listening to some of the Robert Fripp and Steve Hackett, some of the other people who were not, blues guys and not pentatonic guys. And then you listen to, you just wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
And, then your buddies like, their band plays and the solo comes up and it's Ernie, 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 Ernie. Like, no, that's not playing guitar. That's just going Ernie, Ernie along with the chords. I want to do something better than they're different. I don't want to do that. That's what everybody else does.
Yeah.
And, then you try to learn The Great Deceiver by King Crimson or something. And you're like, oh man, this is impossible.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But there were a bunch of high school people without any friends. So what do you do? Sit there and practice guitar in your bedroom at night.
That's what you do.
Yeah. That's what you do. And then it's like, I kind of wish I did learn how to play, pentatonic.
Nerny.
I wish I was better at the nerny. It's like, okay, whatever.
Speaking of that, I mean, all those influences, and then like you were saying, I mean, punk was kind of happening, and that was kind of the fresh new thing. Was that really inspiring for you guys as a band, like seeing the Ramones and those other punk bands, Sex Pistols, kind of informing you guys in terms of how you guys started to write music?
Oh, absolutely. Because, when we started the first band, we didn't know how to play at all. Somewhere there's, I don't know, there might be a tape of us. We loved Blue Oyster Cult. So I think we played the first 3 songs on Tyranny and Mutation, Red and Black, OD'd on Life Itself, and Hot Rails to Hell. Was what we were trying to do.
Got it.
And, it's like, well, this is kind of above our skill set here. And then, just looking back on it, I think punk music really cemented the need for rhythm guitar, because there were so many people that only played rhythm guitar. There was no lead guitar solos, or, if they were, it was just a little bit of Ernie's thrown in over the top of whatever else was going on. But you didn't need that, but you did need somebody that played a kick-ass rhythm guitar, whenever that was, 1977. And then going into 78, I think, and loving punk rock rhythm guitar, from tons of the British bands, the Sex Pistols, of course, and, the Damned, some of those bands were just so kick-ass and cool. And then, parallel to that, here comes Van Halen with the greatest rhythm guitar of all time.
Yeah.
Best sound, best playing, best rhythm. And you have, Malcolm Young and Eddie Van Halen, and it's like, oh, okay. So, and the punk rockers hated AC/DC and Van Halen.
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't feel the need to choose.
Right.
That's awesome. I think that's cool that you didn't feel the need to choose. Yeah.
No, because we just loved that. And the singer from the Cheaters was, probably a little less Van Halen and a little, he was a little more punk rock guy.
Mm-hmm.
But me and my brother Al, we loved Emerson, Lake and Palmer. We loved Yes and Genesis and King Crimson and, prog rock and, all kinds of stuff. But of course it was not possible to play that kind of music,
Yeah.
when you were just learning how to play guitar. But some of the other things, the punk music it was like, wow, but, let's not forget our Malcolm Youngs and our Eddie Van Halen.
Right. All that prog that you just mentioned right there is the stuff they mention every time they say, this is why we have punk rock. And it's so great that you were on both sides of that. I had to go, it took me years to go all the way around. I like threw out my rock under the bus when I got into punk rock and then came all the way back. And like, it's much better loving everything, I think. But for you to do that at such a young age is pretty fucking cool.
Well, I remember too, even, a few years later when the Fastbacks first started, we didn't know, we're like, well, we like all this kind of music. I remember getting spat at, we played Highway to Hell in at a show in Vancouver, BC in, 1981, maybe. And it did not go over well. Like, people were absolutely like spitting at us. We were opening for DOA.
Oh my god!
Like we committed the worst crime of all time. And people are spitting at us. Kim said that somebody spit went down her throat while she was singing. I got hit by somebody's shoe.
Oh my god!
While we were playing, they're like, that was the Vancouver, BC, which was also one of our favorite places to play, that actually liked our band before other people did. Uh-huh. But there was some people who were not having the crossover style at that point. And of course we loved Motorhead too, and even Motorhead didn't go over. That was metal, and you wouldn't play a Motorhead song, you're going to suffer the wrath of the angry punk rockers. And in hindsight, it was kind of Motorhead that maybe was the truth between the camps, like the one band that both punk rockers and hard rockers could love.
Right.
And, without Motorhead, it might have been a few more years until the punk rockers embraced hard rock, and the hard rockers, went to bat for punk bands. But so I would also say that Motorhead, was bridged the gap between the two at some point, but not necessarily by 1980, 1981. It was not quite time for that yet. Maybe not till 82 or 83,
The anti-Nern was heavy then. Yeah. I grew up in the Midwest, and that was like, definitely the camps were well divided for a long time. And I was kind of on the rock side of it. I loved all those rock bands you mentioned, but I was like, I don't really like this punk rock. They can't play and all this bullshit. But secretly, the energy just really spoke to me. And I knew that someday I would be there, but it took a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like, how can you not get that energy and just go, this is like really fucking cool? But you had to if you were like a rocker in the Midwest.
Right. There was no lead. There was no shredding, so, yeah. And there's no drum fills, and it was crude. And I remember, being in a record store. There was a record store that specialized in import, UK imports and stuff like that, and they played on the stereo the first Discharge 45, which is absolutely fantastic, but it sounds like a garbage dump. I mean, the people can absolutely barely play, and they put that on the stereo, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is like the absolute most crude, music and recording and everything. And, whatever year that was, 81, maybe 80. Yeah. And I just thought, whoa, this gives me the chills. It's so intense. Yeah. And so like, whatever it is, it's like, I'm buying this. There's no doubt about that. Just like, this takes the cake for a band, sounded like a band going into a studio for the first time and barely able to play. But, the energy level is just like out of this world. And, because I guess, back before punk came out, we liked all the hard rock bands, and, kind of the first Montrose record was the torch bearer of, for high school kids. Everybody's albums would, however many songs there was on a side, there'd always be one or two, lame ones or kind of mid-tempo ones or softer ones. And And we're just like, no, you can have a little quiet part, but the song has to be tough.
Yeah.
You can have a little interlude. We loved Queen, but we always wanted a band that would make a record that all the songs were kick-ass.
Yeah. Bangers.
And, that first Montrose was kind of the first record of that sort. And then, later on, even Sex Pistols album, it's like, well, you got this right. Every song is just, so the punk rockers were kind of the first people to make a career out of that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so cool that your musical tastes are so eclectic, and I feel the same way. We're kind of similar ages. Do you think radio at the time and music at the time, and obviously your exposure to the vast records and when your dad took you to, thrifting and stuff like that, but what do you attribute your eclectic musical taste to?
I don't know. I've never really thought of that.
Because I think it's really cool, that you didn't necessarily have a camp. I mean, I kind of did when I was young, but I liked a lot of different stuff. Maybe at a certain point in my, male adolescent rocker, journey, I couldn't admit that I liked certain things, but I liked them secretly, right? But but I think it's cool to have eclectic taste in music, and it's cool to hear you talk about it so passionately, and so like you loved it all, and it was cool.
Yeah, and we like Humble Pie, but we didn't necessarily like the solo Frampton records. The kind of easy, like the yacht rock kind of stuff didn't. And then also remembering that we're 16 or 17, stuff comes at you from a different angle at that age.
Totally.
But I remember always liking the super melody music.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people don't, people that say, oh, Yes sucks or Genesis sucks and it's, prog rock and that sucks. It's like, well, the singers in those bands are phenomenally good, and there's so much melody packed into the singing as well as the instrumental parts of it. And, for some reason, I absolutely gravitated towards that, also from the cassette, time when people had passed cassettes around, and a grade school buddy gave me his tape of, on one side it was In the Court of the Crimson King, and on the other side it was Islands. Those are the two King Crimson albums that he had. And he wanted to put them on a cassette so that he wouldn't wear out his LP copies, but then he gave me the cassette and probably made himself another one, because I think you get 3 cassettes for 99 cents at Pay and Save. And then listening to that, and you get 21st Century Schizoid Man, which is like insanity music. And then you also get Epitaph, and you get Islands, the song, which are just unbelievable, totally intense. Times it's like, wow, one band can do all this, whatever. And that was a long time ago. That was, I think, even before, I don't even think Starless and Bible Black had come out. So it would have been 73, maybe even. Just as a little 12-year-old kid with headphones on, listening to cassette and just listening to this world of music that it's just written on a cassette. You don't know what they look like or what the records look like or anything like that. It's just this unidentified music. And it's like, wow, this is just, affecting me in a way that like television didn't. Not the band, but everybody's in the living room watching TV and and sitting there with the headphones on, listening to In the Court of the Crimson King, and without knowing anything about it at all, other than it's this just pure music on a unmarked cassette, and just having your innards rebuilt, knowing that music can be that intense and that beautiful and insane and crazy and screaming and nice, and just the whole gamut of musical feelings. They kind of leave. I mean, no, they didn't leave out the middle ground. I Talk to the Wind or whatnot. There was some middle ground in there too, but it was all very melodic and very purposeful, and very well thought out. Just from those seeds were, and I wonder if I still have those cassettes, the one with Islands and the one with the one with In the Court of the Crimson King. I remember what they looked like.
You're making me remember too that I did the same thing. Like, the family had a stereo in the living room, and I would just put the headphones on and I would listen to my, at the time my parents had records too, and my mom was younger than my dad. My dad had all these jazz records. He was a World War II guy. And so I'd put on some of his stuff, or even had Lenny Bruce albums, all kinds of weird shit. And a lot of the stuff went over my head, but like you say, I had a visceral reaction to this music I was listening to, these comedy albums I was listening to, whether I processed all of it at once, which I didn't, but exactly, it was hitting me, and it was sending me messages. And I do remember when I was a kid, there was all kinds of stuff on the radio. There was like R&B, there was pop, the Beatles. So it seemed like at the time, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's generational, or maybe it has gotten more siloed, but it seems like when we were growing up, or even like, we were experiencing 50s stuff, like the tail end of doo-wop and all this other shit was happening. And so I feel like I got exposed to an eclectic array of music through osmosis, if nothing else, that kind of informed me.
And just, look at what was popular on AM radio when we were little kids, like 1968 or 69. We have Deep Purple, Isley Brothers, and the Partridge Family. And then, like the Raspberries come out, and you hear Go All the Way on the radio for the first time. It's like, holy fucking shit, what's this all about? And just, the combinations of things, the super melody and the great singing with kick-ass, somebody bashing the crap out of the drums, and, that, the guitar sound, that sound that just gives you the shivers, it's like, God, I want to hear more of that. It's like, what else is there that tickles these same, these same things? And, Smoke on the Water. It's like, oh, hell yeah, Smoke on the Water. Like
classic.
I remember going down to the Bon Marché downtown. What year did Made in Japan come out? 1973, I suppose. And we must have heard a little of that on FM radio, which we must have just been, I'm thinking me and my brother Al, just starting to get into a little bit, 73, 74. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have enough money to go buy new LPs, and Made in Japan was double album. So it was, however much that was, $6 or something like that. But they had record listening booths at the Bon Marché downtown, and, save up the bus money, and, maybe Mom would give us, $1 to go, buy a hamburger or something downtown at the Woolworths, or, here's $1. Go buy yourselves. You guys get milkshakes when you're down there. We just go downtown and wander around, look around. And we figured out that there was the record store that they had at the Bon Marché was up on one of the top floors. And you take the elevator up there, and they, had like 3 listening booths. And if there's nobody in one, you could bring up a record and say, can you put on, the side of this? And, going in and listening to whatever it was, forget what side it was. It had Strange Kind of Woman and maybe Lazy.
Yeah.
And just put that on and listening to it in this record booth, and just like, whoa, what kind of a world did this music come from? You can tell they're actually playing it. It's like real music. And can you play the other side? It's okay, but that's probably got to be it for you kids. Okay, we listen to that. It's like, someday we're going to save up and we'll actually be able to have this record. And just the mystery, like, everything was a little more mysterious, as of course you guys know. You could get Cream magazine, and some of the even Rolling Stone or whatever. You could read about some bands and look into that, and that was about it. Yeah. Midnight Special and Don Kirshner's, you could get an idea of what rock bands looked like, but you weren't just saturated, and you had to seek stuff out and hear stuff on obviously cassettes and stuff. But nobody didn't really have any like mentors as far as playing guitar. It's like I remember the first time somebody, said, well, just play along with the record and you can figure out a lot of stuff. And it's like, wow, I never even considered playing along with the record. How would you get your guitar to be in tune with the record?
Right.
It's like, oh, it's not that hard. There wasn't a guitar tuner. Nobody had a guitar tuner. It's like, well, somebody did show me that. And it's like, oh yeah, get the new Cheap Trick record in color, put that on, and it goes at the beginning, and just tune your guitar to that. It's an A, and then you'll probably be pretty well in tune. Really? You can do that? And you figure out how to tune your guitar to Hello There in color. Wow. Whoa, I can play along with records, and you can tell, because of course you try to figure out songs, figuring out totally wrong and everything, and if you can play along with the record, at least you have a fighting chance of knowing if it's right. You can tell when it's wrong. You can't always figure out what's right, but when you're playing it wrong. But obviously people take that for granted now, but in no way did we take that for granted. It's like, it was a life changer to figure out. It's like, I don't know how to tune a guitar to itself barely or to anything else. It's like, I just don't know.
Exactly.
Well, here's this a pitch pipe or something like that. It's like, no, that's not kick-ass. That's
not kick-ass at all.
That's not pitch pipe.
Ted Nugent was good for one thing back then. His records were all in E or A, and they were really great for playing along. That's where I learned how to play guitar. I could tune to that record for some reason. I mean, Stranglehold just goes on and on and on. And it's an A, so it gives you a long time to figure that out.
Right. And of course, we love that album, but it wasn't. When did that record come out? 75, probably. And that was actually one of the first Coliseum rock shows that I saw was it was Aerosmith headlining Kansas in the middle and Ted Nugent, Stranglehold album opening. Wow. And we're like, oh fuck yeah, we love that Ted Nugent record. We loved Kansas. Was whatever record they had, what was the third record, Mask or something like that. We loved Kansas. And Ted Nugent, at that point was just the greatest. And we're like, fuck, this is killer. Kansas came on, absolutely killer. And then Aerosmith, which we loved Aerosmith, but it was the first time that I was aware of a band not being very good.
Yeah.
Which is weird for a 14-year-old kid. It's like, oh, this kind of sucks. It doesn't sound very good. And of course, I don't remember why, but after two bands were just totally razor sharp and killer, and then Aerosmith, they played, songs we loved, but maybe it was Rocks too, or maybe was that 75, 76? It could have been Toys in the Attic, but just like, I don't know. I don't know about Aerosmith. And, after seeing that, it's like, well, maybe I like Ted Nugent and these other bands more. And, maybe I was right.
Yeah, well, following Kansas, a group of virtuosos, and then you got Aerosmith, who were like 6 sheets to the wind, like can't even find the microphone.
Right. A group of virtuosos that didn't have a hit song yet.
Right. That was before Left Overture.
Yeah. They didn't have Carry On My Wayward Son yet. So they were just out for blood. They were just like, we're going to rattle your bones. And then you watch some videos of Kansas, that one where the singer's totally on coke and he's just jumping around. Wow.
Sweat socks and shorts.
Yeah, exactly that video. And it's like, wow, that is unbelievable how kick-ass that is.
They were like a rock and roll village people. We have the guy in like the tuxedo, you got the guy in the overalls, and there's the guy in the sweat socks and shorts.
Right, the guy with an eye patch. They were the prog rock village people. But they're kind of in some ways parallel to Cheap Trick. They've probably been playing their prog rock in bars and tried to figure out how to make that kind of music draw people into bars, throughout the 70s. And I think the next time Cheap Trick played was with opening for Kansas, I think early in 78. And Kansas were still killer. They were, still ripping it up at that point, and then, kind of lose track of them. But, so many of the bands just kind of lose their edge. Once you have some hits, you want some more hits. And
Totally.
Right.
Well, hey, man, we've kept you over an hour.
We need a 2-part. I want to get to the 90s. I want to talk about the 90s.
Oh, yeah. We're still stuck in the 70s. We haven't moved past 79, really.
I could talk about the 70s and 80s for all day, but
yeah, we'd love to have you on again, dude. It's such a blast. And
yeah. Well, we'll figure out some time. I mean, it's
I would
super
love it,
fun
dude.
Going over all these great things. And, you talk about the people. Oh, I saw the Beatles. I saw the Hendrix Experience. Oh, yeah, I saw Cream a couple times. Or, I saw this. It's like, I could listen to people talk about that forever. You saw the Beatles, and stuff like that. And it's like, well, seeing Van Halen on Van Halen 2 too, where, I would put that up against, seeing Cream somewhere. It's a little bit different, but I'm going to say it's pretty exciting.
I agree because and like you said, it's whatever generational experience you had, there's the common thread of you being in this room, experiencing this music, this event, the audio, the visual, and having it impact you in this visceral, emotional way.
Right. And also being of that age too, where you haven't been burned out on things,
exactly.
Everything is kind of new. And, you've been listening to your King Crimson cassettes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer album, and, your Yes, Fragile. And, you've listened to these things, and then, being able to see some of that stuff actually being played. And it's like, wow, people are really doing this. And,
yes.
That coupled with actually seeing stuff loud and in your face, like that UFO show at the Gold Creek Dome. It's like, and you're thinking like, I don't want to get kicked out, but there's Michael Schenker and there's Phil Mogg right there.
Yeah.
And, their encore was Boogie for George. And we probably had that first UFO record, which is the total
weird
garage rock sounding one. And it's like, they're not going to do anything, that's all something else. They don't do anything like that. And it's like, and, like whenever that was 1976. So that record was like 5 years old at that time, which is nothing these days, but you would never expect them to play anything. And then they played that song. We're like, holy fuck, they're playing a song we never thought they would play. And it's just everything was so killer.
Like things are universal, a lot of this rock and roll stuff, because I'm in way across the country and the same thing. I had a friend who had a Bandmaster head with a cabinet that he made out of wood with 2 Radio Shack Utah speakers in it. And he just cranked that shit up. Universal, every guy just figuring it out. You know what I mean? Just enjoying music and figuring the shit out.
Exactly. Yeah, you want the Marshall half stack, but as I say, it was a Marshall head was $500. Les Paul Jr. was $500. I don't have that kind of money. I don't want to have a job. I had some job that fucking garbage, barely make any money, I don't have money to buy anything for $500. You figure it out. And then, we could go on about the early Gear years too, but then you think of, these bands, the British bands that all had SGs or Les Paul Juniors and half stacks. And it's like, well, how did I get that? It's like, oh, they're on record labels that gave them the gear to get them started. And, so many bands, completely got ripped up by the record labels. Like, well, they did probably buy you all your gear to begin with. And, whatever. I'm not taking sides on anything like that, but it's like, well, how come these British bands all sounded good? Oh, because they had, new drum sets and they had, good gear and everything like that. And all the, get Black Flag or something like that playing through the PVPA head cranked all the way up to get a guitar sound. And it's like, he probably wanted to have a Marshall full stack too, but, I got this PV thing. If I turn it all the way up, it, gets the job done.
Exactly.
And the American bands had to be a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Resourceful. Frugal, resourceful. Yes, right. Because you didn't have any money. So being frugal wasn't part of it. You just didn't have the money.
Yeah, right. Forced frugality.
Forced frugality. That was named my second punk band. Forced frugality.
But then down the road, you get all these kids who are trying to get that sound that these guys had back then. So they're looking for the PV head or whatever to crank it up.
Yeah, looking for the PVP head. PA had 200 watts.
I got to find one of those. That record sounds amazing.
Yeah. And, I got news for you. This record sounds amazing. It sounds like dog shit, and it's the most killer thing of all time.
Yeah.
It sounds killer in spite of the fact that nobody knew what they were doing.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, let's do this again. I had such a great time.
Absolutely.
But we'll let you go for today. And we just had such a blast. I'd love to do this again.
Well, call again. We'll get together and jabber on.
Definitely.
Thanks so much, Kurt.
You're very welcome. And it was great jabbering.
Awesome. All right. We'll talk soon, bud.
Bye now.